The story begins in a desert where three smugglers were searching for rare items buried under rocks. After searching for a while, one man finally found a hole in the ground. He immediately called his friends over, and together they filled the hole with gas. Moments later, when one man peered into the hole, a spider suddenly bit him from inside. The man began to cry out in agony, and at the same time, several spiders emerged from the hole. The smugglers started capturing them in plastic boxes. The condition of the man who was bitten was deteriorating rapidly, so the others, taking pity on him, killed him on the spot. Sometime later, we see that these spiders are being illegally sold worldwide as valuable pets. Then, in France, we meet a man named Caleb, who has come to buy jewelry after selling some stolen goods. When the clerk took him to his office, Caleb spotted a spider in a plastic box. He liked the spider a lot, so he bought it. Afterward, he met his friend Mathis, who had a penchant for stealing bicycles. Caleb, on the other hand, was a shoe dealer, and Mathis helped him find customers. Anyway, when Caleb arrived home, he saw his sister Manon busy with house repairs. He then went to his room and panicked when he saw the lights were off. He immediately turned them on, and we see that he had many valuable pets that survived only with the warmth of the lights. Caleb placed the new spider in a shoebox. He then scolded Manon again for turning off the lights, as it could kill his pets. In response, Manon yelled back at him because his habits were causing the electricity bill to skyrocket. Meanwhile, in Caleb's room, the spider had chewed a hole in the box and escaped. A few hours later, when Caleb returned home, he turned the lights on again. As soon as he opened the box, he realized the spider had escaped. He frantically searched the entire room for it. However, he then found a spider egg, which he hid in a box and then went to sleep comfortably on the sofa. The next morning, Manon woke Caleb up, and he saw that one of their friends was helping them fix their bathroom. Anyway, Caleb left without showering, taking new sneakers to his client, Tom. Just then, a man named Gilles saw them. He suspected they were smuggling drugs under the guise of selling sneakers and told Caleb, "I'm watching you." Later, Tom hid in the supply room to try on the new sneakers. Suddenly, something bit his foot. He quickly pulled his foot out and looked inside the sneaker, and a spider crawled out onto his arm. Panicked, Tom threw it on the ground and smashed it with the sneaker. When he looked inside the sneaker again, hundreds of tiny spiders suddenly swarmed out and crawled all over his body, causing him to panic. Meanwhile, his dog picked up the largest dead spider from the floor and ate it. On the other side, when Caleb returned to his room, he found his friends staring at his pets. They didn't know that Caleb bought illegal animals. At that moment, Caleb started receiving continuous calls from Tom but ignored them. Finally, after everyone left, he closed the door and stuffed a towel into the gap at the bottom. He then called Tom, but he didn't answer because he was in excruciating pain. Strange wounds had appeared on his skin, and a yellow liquid was oozing from his eyes. As he tried to stand up to answer the phone, he suddenly slipped and fell, and all the glass containers there shattered over him. Now, with glass piercing him everywhere, he was also bleeding profusely. A short while later, we see Tom's dog barking continuously, which was greatly disturbing his neighbors. They called Tom and knocked on his door, but he didn't respond. Finally, Gilles broke down the door, and the scene inside horrified them. The police were soon called, but even they couldn't figure out how Tom had died. When the neighbors saw the police wearing masks, they grew even more alarmed. An argument broke out among the people about how Tom died. Some said he was a drug user and must have died from an overdose. Eventually, the police managed to calm them down and send them back to their homes. For everyone's safety, the police forbade anyone from leaving the building. The police announced that if anyone felt sick, doctors would come to them and they should wait. Everyone watched as Tom's body was taken away, and then they returned to their homes. Caleb and his friends brought Tom's dog with them and began to wonder what could have happened. Manon asked if Caleb had really sold drugs hidden in the shoes, which made Caleb furious. Meanwhile, we see Zhao, who went to put things away in the supply room. Her eyes fell upon the ceiling, which was covered in spider webs. She tied a cloth over her mouth and started spraying repellent throughout the room, but she didn't notice that several spiders had already escaped through a vent. In a few moments, these spiders emerged in Caleb's bathroom, where Jordy's girlfriend, Lila, was washing her hands. Suddenly, she noticed the vent cover on the floor. She picked it up, climbed onto a stool, and tried to put it back. Unfortunately, her foot slipped, and she fell into the shower. As she managed to stand up, she saw a towel moving. She shook the towel, but there was nothing there. Then a spider suddenly leaped out, and Lila, terrified, hid in the shower. She started screaming for help, and Jordy came to her aid. However, he didn't want to kill animals, so he decided to trap the spider with a glass. But the spider jumped and hid under the sink. Soon, the rest of their friends arrived in the bathroom, all giving him different advice. Jordy got frustrated, grabbed a mop, and started striking violently under the sink to kill the spider. However, the spider quickly climbed onto the mop and jumped onto the shower. Jordy threw a towel at it, knocking it down. He then started stomping on it with his shoe to kill it. Moments later, when he lifted the towel, everyone was stunned as many small spiders scurried away from there. During this, larger spiders began to emerge from the shower drain, causing Lila to freeze in fear. Jordy immediately pulled her out of the bathroom, and they quickly closed the door and sealed it with tape. Afterward, they demanded the whole truth from Caleb. Caleb finally confessed that he had bought an illegal spider, but insisted that the one he bought was much smaller than this. Mathis then suggested that its offspring were adapting to the local environment and growing rapidly. Caleb picked up the box with the spider egg, and as soon as Jordy opened it, it was swarming with a legion of spiders. Mathis quickly sealed this box with tape as well. During this time, we see Zhao still cleaning the building, and she finds a dead spider. At the same time, the police returned and announced that everyone in the building would have to be quarantined. They then sealed the main entrance of the building. Zhao moved further and found even larger spider webs in the corridor, with birds trapped in them. She climbed a ladder to the ceiling and opened a panel. As she peeked inside, she saw it was filled with spider nests. Zhao covered her face and once again used the spray. She then used a flashlight to look inside again, but a spider leaped onto her face and she fell from the ladder in panic. Back at Caleb's apartment, Lila, Manon, and Jordy decided to leave the building, defying the police orders. However, Mathis decided to stay because the police were already looking for him on theft charges. Caleb also chose to stay, wanting to support his neighbors in this difficult time. But when his friends repeatedly urged him to leave, Caleb agreed. He also told all the other neighbors that they could leave too. Next, we see another apartment where a man was exercising while listening to music. As he looked in the mirror, he realized there was a spider behind him. But when he turned around, the spider was gone. He searched his room for a while and found it on a wall. He struck the spider hard, but in the process, he made a hole in the wall. As he peered into the hole, he saw many webs, and suddenly a swarm of spiders attacked him. He screamed for help, but his father was asleep in the other room and didn't hear his cries. Meanwhile, Mathis and Caleb were going door to door, advising neighbors to flee, but everyone was too scared to even come out. They also knocked on the exercising man's door, but due to the loud music, they didn't hear his screams. Caleb then rushed to check on Claudia, but she didn't open the door. Hearing the TV from inside, he broke down the door and saw her sleeping on the sofa. But as he got closer to Claudia, hundreds of spiders emerged from her corpse. Seeing this, Caleb and Mathis ran away in terror. Just then, an old man approached them asking for help. Mathis moved forward to help him, but Caleb stopped him because the man had been bitten by a spider. They told the man to go back to his home and immediately fled. Meanwhile, at home, Lila was repeatedly changing news channels on the TV, but found no news about their building anywhere. Jordy then researched on the internet and discovered that these were Cytididae spiders, a species that can increase its body size up to 10 times to fight its enemies. Manon checked social media, and there was no warning from the government there either. Only residents of the building were tweeting, fed up with the quarantine. Suddenly, they heard the sound of breaking glass from the kitchen. Jordy saw a strange liquid seeping from under the door. When he looked inside, he realized that Tom's dog was dead, and a spider was emerging from its stomach. With that, the situation in the entire building quickly deteriorated. In that apartment, the man's father found his son's corpse. The old man was catching spiders in glasses, but was soon killed as well. The truth was that people were being killed on every floor due to the terror of these spiders. Anyway, Mathis and Caleb returned to their apartment to find their friends waiting outside. They wanted to flee at that very moment, and no one was willing to go back inside. Suddenly, Gilles came up behind them and attacked them with a stick. He first injured Caleb and then started beating Mathis. When Manon tried to calm him down, Gilles shouted at them to go back to their homes. Gilles then said that Jordy and Lila shouldn't be there because they didn't live in the building. After this, Gilles forcibly tried to enter Caleb's room because he still suspected Caleb of smuggling drugs and other illegal things. But when the others tried to stop Gilles, his suspicion grew even stronger. Caleb then angrily gave him permission to enter the room. Gilles searched the room and found the sealed box. He opened it with his knife. As soon as the box was opened, all the spiders suddenly burst out, and Caleb and his companions fled the apartment. They locked the door from the outside to stop the spiders, but poor Gilles was trapped inside, dying in agony. After that, they all ran down the stairs and found terrifying spider webs in every corner. Finally, they reached a corridor that was completely covered in webs and had extremely large spiders. Now they all had to reach the garage, so they ran to the lower floor, but there were even denser webs and more spiders. They had no other choice, so they covered their heads and started moving through the corridor. Manon stayed behind to manage the lights. The spiders stayed away when the lights were on. They all managed to cross the corridor, and now it was Manon's turn. But just as she reached the end of the corridor, the lights went out and she got tangled in the webs. She lit her lighter and saw a spider approaching her. But lighting it would cause the other spiders to attack as well, so in a single moment, she ran to the end of the corridor. Finally, they tried to get out, but the police had locked the door from the outside. The police paid no attention to their pleas for help. They all pushed with their full force and opened the door slightly, but the police released gas on them through the gap. Yet they persisted in trying to open the door, so the police started firing at it. Now they had no choice, so they ran back through the secret corridor to the stairs. Fortunately, due to the gas, the spiders did not attack them. But then they realized that Jordy was nowhere to be seen. Caleb, risking his own life, went back into the corridor and found Jordy lying on the ground, entangled in webs and spiders. Jordy told Caleb to go back, but Caleb was not ready to leave him alone. But now the spiders were coming to attack him too, so he reluctantly had to run back. Lila burst into tears at the loss of her boyfriend. But then Mathis's gaze fell on a strange liquid. When he looked up, his eyes widened in horror because several bodies were trapped in webs on the ceiling. In addition, a giant spider was emerging from the web. Mathis immediately alerted his friends, and they all left Jordy behind, closed the door, and ran. They all reached an empty room, but Lila kept trying to run back to save her boyfriend. Manon managed to hold her back with great difficulty, and then they all heard Jordy's painful screams. Just then, Mathis's eyes fell on a bag on the floor, which contained some fire sticks. While the others were crying over Jordy's death, Mathis told them to stay strong because they still had to get out of there safely. He was confident that they could keep the spiders at bay with fire and reach the roof to call for help. First, Mathis lit a firecracker in the corridor. The explosion stunned all the spiders on the ceiling, freezing them in place. Then, using the firecrackers as a shield, they carefully crossed the corridor. As soon as the fire stick's flame went out, Caleb took a petrol bomb from the bag and threw it into the corridor, causing a massive fire. The spiders suddenly started chasing them. They all immediately ran up the stairs, flashing their flashlights at the spiders to push them back. They then heard people from an apartment asking for help, but they told them to stay inside and kept running. Now their flashlights had very little battery left, so Manon tried to pick the lock on Jill's door. In a few moments, she succeeded, and they all entered Jill's apartment, closing the door just before the spiders could get in. A little later, Caleb began to feel immense regret, believing he was the real cause of the spider infestation. Suddenly, a light shone at the window, and moments later, police officers forced their way into the apartment. Caleb told them to help the other neighbors, but the police didn't listen to him at all, and one officer even slapped him to shut him up. Caleb then attacked him back, and the enraged officer threw him to the ground and began to beat him mercilessly. Manon tried hard to save her brother, but the officer pushed her away too. Meanwhile, Matisse clashed with another officer, and soon a fierce fight broke out between the two groups. Then, one officer attacked Matisse with pepper spray and started to choke him. Just in the nick of time, Caleb picked up a fallen gun from the floor and hit the police officer, saving his friend's life. Meanwhile, the other officers cornered the two girls and attacked them with gas. Two officers managed to subdue Caleb, and finally, the police arrested them all and took them to the garage. There, we see that the police were already figuring out how to fight the spiders in the garage. A special team was collecting dead spiders for investigation. Their lead officer said that Caleb and his group were about to ruin their mission. He claimed that everything they had done so far was to help the people in the building. But Caleb argued that they hadn't done their duty and continued to shout at the police officers. At that very moment, Matisse started coughing violently, and it was revealed that he had been bitten by a spider. He didn't have much time left, but he decided that he would help his friends before he died. Matisse walked over to the generator and turned it off, plunging the entire building into darkness. He then jumped on the police officer at the door, pushed him aside, and opened the main door. In moments, hundreds of spiders swarmed in, and the police opened fire on them. Soon, the spiders overwhelmed the police and started killing them too. Caleb and the two girls took advantage of this opportunity and escaped. Soon Lila and Caleb hid behind a car, but then they realized they had left Manon behind. Lila freed Caleb's handcuffs with her lighter, and just then they saw the spiders kill another man. Caleb told Lila to hide in a car and went to find his sister himself. He navigated through the chaos and reached his sister, but during this, he was shot in the leg. Manon then picked up a fire extinguisher, broke a van's window, and hid in the van with Caleb. She then treated Caleb's wound and apologized for her mistakes. Soon, several spiders appeared at the window, but before they could get into the vehicle, Lila turned on the car's lights and scared them away. The brother and sister then fled from the vehicle, and dodging police and spiders along the way, they reached Lila's car. Lila immediately turned the car around, hitting several cars and police officers on her way out. But as Caleb got out of the car to open the exit gate, a very large spider stood blocking their path. For a moment, it seemed like it was over for Caleb, but no one moved, and Lila also turned off the car lights, after which the spider quietly walked away. After that, Caleb immediately opened the outer gate, and they all somehow managed to escape with their lives.
If you want interesting movie recaps, like, share, and subscribe to follow us for more movie recaps.